Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I let our mentor today introduce himself, and then we can start as always, usually, um, our Q&A session. So yeah, the floor is yours, Pixel.
Mm, Thank you so much, Matthias. Uh, well, first of all, thank you so much for the invite. So nice to be here. I've been following the residency program since the beginning and the journey with the vertical crypto. And I feel like mm, any kind of educational or residency or all sorts of things that um, embrace critical thinking and conceptual or side of things is so precious in the space. So I feel honored to be here. Um, I'm Pixelful for those that be. I'm an artist from Brazil. I'm 33 years old. I've been doing art and design for the past, I think, 18 years or so. I started very young in my career. I went to art school at the age of 16 by 2005. Then I graduated. It was like this art slash design school. So I picked design, graphic design as my major. Later, I started to work with a lot of companies as a designer, but I've always had the artistic practice as a side thing since then. And later, I also decided to study advertisement, and so I graduated at advertisement as well. Um, I've been doing generative art for I think 10 years or so, but I honestly didn't have a very clear perspective on where to fit in the market my work, especially in Brazil. There are not many galleries that have been displaying digital work in any forms. So for like 2 years, 2 years ago, I started to talk to a curator and try to fit my work somehow in the market and shape my career and try to see what would be a good path to finally make a movement from the design career to the art career. And luckily, last year I started to sell my work as NFTs, which was a perfect fit for digital and generative art. And yeah, with the whole NFT movement happening, I was able to connect to a lot of friends that I've been um, admiring the work for so long. So from 1 year to this this moment right now, I feel like I've been living a very lucky path, connecting to so many amazing artists, and it's been like this big moment where I can find people that I relate with, and I see this moment right now as another opportunity to connect to a lot of nice people that I think we all share the same goal. I think it doesn't matter if you have like 1, 5, 10, 15, 20 years of career. Um, we are always seeking to express ourselves in a way that share we can give some sort of form to so the world can see our thoughts. So I always see the opportunity to talk to each other artists as a gift. Um, and yeah, I think that's it. The core of my research has been for the past years to understand how we can drive real experiences like we have, for example, in nature, but in art, having mediator and in most of the cases a screen, right? So we are of course aware that art is this big force that drives us, that allows us to connect to a lot of things, but the screen can both be a blessing and a curse sometimes. It can distract us. It can be this thing that is with us 24 by 7. So how this mediator has been influencing our relations with art. The first time that I thought about that, I think in a really uh, in a more thoughtful way. I was visiting Iceland, which is a country that I always wanted to visit. And when I was there, two things came to my attention. The first was that a lot of times we see ourselves in nature, like, for example, look into a waterfall, and in a matter of seconds, you are connected to the moment, and and you don't need any meaning to have a powerful connection to the moment. So that made me think, like, how can I bring this to my art? How can I make people connect to the subjects that I want to explore in this very instinctive way without necessarily having symbols or signs or representing anything specific in a very pure form. But the second thing that I thought was I saw a lot of people experiencing the moment through mediators, through a screen, through a phone. And that made make me think, like, how this kind of relationship with devices have been shaping our new experiences, and to which extent is that a good or a bad thing, and how can we bring that to a good side if there's something like that. But since then, those questions have been helping me to explore the subject and trying to understand, like, these moments, these little moments where we connect to something that is bigger than we are, and how our perception about time uh, is changed all the time. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with my work, but I'm constantly working with loops and flashing objects, and those are trials to experiment this concept of our perception about time. And Pixelful is a kind of new project which I have been working at for just a year, and with this very specific, um, consistent visual. But I used to explore the same subject in other forms. But at some point, I wanted to see if I could somehow approach this super serious subject with something that is not visually scary, or somehow can be inviting. Uh, so that's why I'm usually working with a lot of colors and high saturation and things like that. But yeah, I think that's it. That's kind of the journey so far, and this is what I have been working at this moment.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's begin with our Q&A session, guys. Feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat to ask questions to our guest.
Hey, Pixel, thanks so much for doing this. I have been a absolute humongous fan of your work since kind of stumbling on it through a friend of mine, Nicholas Sassoon, sort of trumpeting your stuff on Hicket Nuke back in the early days. So huge fan. I'm just fanboying out pretty hard right now. I wanted to sort of start things off with just like asking about just your technical process, like how the looping pixel animations are wonderful, and also I'm in the same and similar to like Nicholas's work, I'm generally just like dumbfounded and completely confused about how you go about creating the work that you make. And like over time, it's become more and more intricate. The animation frames are just becoming more and more just like mind, for lack of a better word, mind bending. And obviously, I don't want you to give away your entire process, but is there anything you can share about like how you create your work? Thank
Hey, Chris. Thank you so much for the kind words. It's always amazing to know that people somehow relate to my work, and Nicholas is such a great person and friend. So thank you so much. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I've mentioned this before, but I work 100% of my pieces are done with processing. That for those that are not familiar with, I know that generative art has been a huge topic in the past year, especially because of art blocks, which is amazing to see the field being uh, so vivid in this moment. But to those that are not familiar with, processing is a coding environment. It was created by Ben Fry and um, Casey Reese. They were both students at the MIT. They were students of John Maeda, which is also a great name. Um, and they created this project that is an attempt to see designers and artists to create things with code and create software and things like that. Um, w- One of the things that is amazing about Process is that it's a open source project, so anyone can try it, and there are tons of things out there to explore the tool. Um, so about so how does that fit in my process of work? I've been playing with processing for a long time, but um, I've always I think that e- e- ever since I first started to work with it, I would like spend a year working on it, and then I would abandon it, and then I would get back to it. But um I also worked a lot with Houdini, which is another tool that also allow you to play with code and work with particles. And when I went back to processing a few years ago, I started to learn about particle generation, and there is this amazing book uh, by Daniel Schiffman called "The Nature of Code," where he'll explain concepts of nature and explain how to implement those concepts. So, uh, given my research background, this attempt to understand nature, uh, I would always try to replicate nature movements in my programs and in my work somehow, and processing came perfect for it to explore those movements. Um, so when the thing that I used to do a lot, like for those past 2 years that I work a lot with this curator, I spent a lot of time like reading and researching. And I went through this phase in my life where I could not produce anything. Like was so stuck to the idea that I had to create perfect art, that it had to be that every project that I had to release needed to be like super impactful, and that for a long time I spent like just studying and producing almost nothing. At this time, I was studying painting, but it had nothing to do to my research. I just could not transfer one thing to the other. So after all this time, like researching and thinking, this curator convinced me like that to create meaningful art and to create something that is related to your thoughts, you don't have to push that hard. You just have to start to producing. So after this long time, I finally accepted that, and this is what I have been doing at least for a few like 2 or 3 years. And Pixel Fool was born in the middle of this way of working. So uh, sometimes I will still like think about concepts and write it down. Like, oh, I would like to explore. Um, I don't know, time jumping. So let me share my screen here right now. I think it would be nice to share what I'm bringing. Oh, let me see here. I think I have to. Just 1 second. Um, Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So um, I'll go to like the first project here. Um, so yeah, for example, this project was born from a sketch where, actually not from a sketch, but from a single word that I've written down, which was like time bridge. And then what I did after that was to go
I
in
think,
processing.
sorry, Pixel. I think we cannot see the project. I see your screen, but it's like a setting screen. I don't know if you're showing
Oh,
anything. Yeah,
Just your security and privacy settings
exactly.
at the moment.
okay, let me go again and try to share the right one. Can you see it now?
Now
We
we can see Discord.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you see an image?
No,
No, we say
just
Discord.
No?
Mhm.
Oh, that's so awkward. Okay. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm new with this sharing. Oh, okay. So, oh, now I see. I was speaking like just the application. Sorry.
Okay, now we see an image.
Oh,
maybe.
perfect. So, uh, um, so this was the project that I was showing. So this project was born just by reading down concepts that I wanted to create and try to somehow uh, represent. So for this one, I remember that I just written down like bridge, and then what I would do after that is like go in processing, um, open the program, and start to thinking of ways to represent that, right? But sometimes that will be like the opposite way, where I will just open processing. And the thing that led me to love creative coding and generative art so much is because you can like tweak things, just a little thing, and we'll see everything changing. So processing and all kinds of creative coding in general art platforms we usually have that as a way of working, this very experimental thing where you can just go and tweak things and see what can appear. Uh, and code is super technical. So the more time you spend with it, the more you start to get familiar with things. And I think, well, that applies to almost everything. But when I would like to spend too much time away from it, I would forget some things. So ever since I moved to a full-time art career, I've been able to play with the tool every single day. And that allows you to go explore more. And that's why I think what you mentioned that the works have been becoming each time more complex somehow is all because of that because you can like um, you can see like these subtle things that you can change it to create to I think since a lot of things to me is about the feeling you have to be somehow experimental. So yeah, usually that's the process. I will either go from the concept to code and start to feel how the concept develops, or I can do the other way. So for example, this piece that I saw like this week on Foundation, um, it started as another piece for a collection that I've been trying to build, right? So as you can see, like here, the background is basically the same movement, and it makes sense here. But by experimenting and at some point thinking like, oh, um, maybe this whole movement would make a lot of sense with color cycling, so I should try that. And it's interesting because it requires some sort of not courage, but you have to just go and try. And sometimes you get surprised with what comes up. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered the question or more or less, but I hope somehow I did.
No, that's really great. I appreciate the insight because like from a viewer's perspective, we see these like really just beautiful loops, but it is or until now anyway, a mystery to me, like how you would sit down and like to the bridge example was really interesting where it's like you had this sort of thematic concept in your mind and then getting to the final um, like yeah, looping animation, I can kind of start to see how you got there. Yeah, this has been really illuminating. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I could answer that.
I'll jump in with another question, actually, but I don't want to hog everyone else's time. So hopefully some other people have some questions. But you mentioned that the Pixel Fool as an identity is um, sort of like only a year or two, I think, maybe only a year or so old. Um, and I've always been really impressed by the like very tight sort of visual theme that you've been able to run within. Can you speak a little bit about like sort of cultivating a very like specific identity and your both like struggles as well as benefits of working within those boundaries?
Of course. So the concept has been kind of the same, right? I I started by exploring with the relation of time, things like that. And I'll do something that I never do, but I think it's it's safe to do. So I don't care. I think it's nice to show how that happened. But I already used to work a lot with looping things. But as I said, like a lot of my work was super serious to me, and I had a lot of other experiments where I would um, where where I wanted to explore a different kind of visual. I've always, I think, because of my love for computer art, for generative art, and the poetic of machines and things like that, I've always loved obsolete technologies. So uh, I was working with things like this and this, and those projects they were like super computer intensive and would require a lot of quality. Um, so I had a lot of other experiments uh, where I would play with obsolete technologies, and the idea of working under constraints, but somehow to be able to, instead of waiting for hours for something to be rendered and then try to go back and make a minor adjustment and then waiting for hours again, led me to try to explore this other side where I could just hit play and see my work happening. And I've always loved like um, mechanical displays and little devices. For example, uh, I can most of those uh, sketches, those uh, softwares that I have, they will run pretty easily on Raspberry Pi, for example. So I had this other side of me that I felt like the market, although I'm 100% in favor of, as an artist, you have the freedom to explore all kinds of fields, and I've been doing this my entire life, like playing with oil painting and learning about classical painting, and then learning about photography, and then learning about code, and then something else, and but at some point you realize that the market will not always be so welcoming with complete opposite spectrums, right? At least in my mind, that was my experience. I think that probably as you start to have a bit more an audience and more people paying attention to your work and already understanding what you're trying to do, it's easier to spread your work and start to play with a lot of things. But until like a year ago, I was not very well known. Like no one knew about my work, basically like close friends. And I've always been super low profile with my work, although super like admiring the work of a lot of artists. I felt that to um, conquer more attention, I had to take some part of my practice and explore. So Pixelful was that. Like I was actually talking to Sassoon by the time, like a year ago, and showing him like a bunch of old works and things that I've been exploring for years, and asking like, oh, what do you think about like having another project, maybe a new name, and exploring with this. And I shared the works with him, and he liked it, and I felt like, okay, I think that maybe could be a path to explore. And I'm I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but I started with like zero followers on Twitter, and published my first work on Hackathon, and some people got interested in it, and then I saw things growing, and I realized that I could go like full force on this path and explore this thing that I've always wanted to. But I think the constraints in that sense helped me more than uh, were trouble. Like I still love the idea, although I love to do other things. Like I love to photograph, I love to play with different kinds of visuals. I also love that I have to force myself to be creative, and I have to also trust my impulses to just opening things as they are and using the same tools that I will be able to create something that reflects what I think. So far, I think before everything, like having uh, styles that were too different were not helping me a lot. I'm not sure why, but the constraints have helped a lot.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I have a question if nobody else has anything. Hello, first of all. Thank you so much for being here. Um, I was wondering if we can expand a little bit on this concept of like the digital identity, um, because I think it's very interesting. Like you said, Pixel Fool was born in like a certain moment of time, and coming from like especially like in the crypto space, like a lot of artists have created their own, online digital identity. Do you see that as something that has helped you in any way, like within your, path in the NFT ecosystem, or I don't know, like what are your thoughts around like anonymity and like online persona as well?
Hi, Nicole. So nice to talk to you. Yeah, I mean, I've been in crypto before. I was in NFTs. I started to play with crypto like 6 years ago, I think. And somehow the idea, the conceptual side of crypto was always super interesting to me. Like you, you have the right uh, not ex- to not expose every single thing about it. And I had this, I have two books that have influenced me a lot. And one was how is it in English? Because I'm both in Portuguese, but uh, one of them was by Byung-Chul Han, this Korean, South Korean philosopher, where he talks a lot about how the society is super tired of things and how our relation um, with the internet has been a problem somehow because you are constantly being um, watched from every side, and how that is a problem to freedom. And I mean, there are a lot of philosophers talking about that. And another book was one called 24 by 7. I'll ping the names here in the links in English after this. But and this one was about like how we are constantly connected, how we don't allow ourselves to rest, and how we are our own bosses right now. And all those things somehow uh, make sense to me um, to be explored through this new way of protecting your data and not exposing everything. Um, of course, you could do that just by disappearing or just showing a frame of what you are. But one thing that is important to mention is that I've worked for 10 years uh, with the sneakerhead market, and I would help big brands like Nike and Adidas and Diadora, Puma to take these very special stories about certain products and um, help them to tell those stories and make sure that people could access them. And also, given the fact that I have I study advertisement, I've always been super strategic with everything that I do. Everything that I put on my Twitter is strategic. I try to think about how that will impact people and if that will help me to build my way of thinking and share my thoughts. And that can be both by sharing my work or by things that I'm sharing. So I think that we are all very complex beings, right? We have so many sides and we have complex personalities. And the internet is this place that is super democratic. Well, at least to some extent, where you can share everything that you want, but also you have a lot of noise. So I think that building this fragment of my personality with a lot of intention helped people to understand, maybe won't understand the totality of what I am as an artist, but at least to understand pretty well this part. So, and I have to mention that when the whole NFT thing started, I started to study the market as much as I could. Like I would uh, see what all the successful artists were doing and trying to understand what kinds of things they were doing that would help them. So, oh, this artist has a super um, consistent style, and this artist works with motion, and this artist did this and that. And I try to see if any of those aspects would somehow talk to things that I was doing, right? Um, and I realized that some of those boxes would be checked. And given the fact that the market allows people to create identities and the whole metaverse idea of um, shape your identity. I think we already have been doing this, like on Instagram, for example, and people don't realize very well. There is this other author called Jean Baudrillard that is super famous. A lot of people know him, but he talks about the idea of simulation, right? And right now, if you open Instagram, you see people performing all the time, like trying to shape the identity. We already are doing this. And you will even see like people doing like body changes based on internet patterns or changing the ways that they travel based on the internet. So I think the way that the internet works privileges the idea of creating this narrative and this digital identity. Um, and there are good things and bad things about it. But as an artist, I feel like if you are comfortable with exploring only one side of things, because sometimes you don't, like you want to be this artist that want to explore as much as you can, and I think it's great. but I think the market um, loves somehow to have an idea of where you are going, right? And this is something that I've been hearing about the traditional market as well. Like collectors usually, if you are concerned about selling, and you don't have to be, but if you are concerned about selling, uh, collectors always have some expectations about your work. So when you are starting and you are at the beginning of your career, sometimes you're still exploring, and maybe a collector can think twice before buying your work because they are not sure in which direction you're going, and they want you to thrive somehow, and they want to have some idea if that work will future. Um, so I think that the NFT market reproduces that vision at some extent. Like collectors still want to know what you're going to be doing, and I've not seen this happening a lot of times, but I wonder what would happen if tomorrow I decided to say like, hey, uh, from now on, I will no longer do pixelated art anymore. I'll do just what I have been doing uh, for the past years, and I think in the same way that it helped me. It could be some sort of shock. I don't know.
Hey, Pixelful, thank you so much for being here. Um, Definitely really admire your work and what you're doing. I want to riff on that previous question and the last thing that you said for a bit. Do you have any like longer term or future plans for Pixelful? Like Pixelful was born. Will they leave the stage at some point, or yeah, have you given thoughts about this, or maybe not even at all?
Hi, Anna. Oh, I love your work. Um, so no, I don't think I'll ever like move to something else. What I have been thinking, like last year, I produced like a lot of work. I worked so much, and I'm honestly very tired right now. I've been trying to slow down the rhythm. Um, but with last year being so productive in a way that I would like produce a piece and release a piece and produce a piece and release a piece, this year I decided that I want to like work on longer projects and um, release them at once. And among those projects, I would love to bring um, some older things that I've been working with. So I think that what I plan from now on is to be able to do that and not be so harsh on myself, like working more than I should and being so concerned with because it's very natural with the pace of the NFT market that the more work you're putting out there, at least for me, it has been like this. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's not the same for everyone, but for me, in my experience, the more work I released, uh, more attention I would get, and people maybe would visit older works and buy other works. So although this is like positive on the market side of things, I think that in this moment I want to be calmer in the way of work, and with that, I'm planning to do bigger projects. So I I have some projects that I feel would cross over really well with Pixelful. I'll show one of them, for example. So let me see. So I used to I have a few projects that are pre-Pixelful, but I think they talk really well. And this kind of project I would love to bring back. And I love to play with physical installations, especially with light. I've always I've always been influenced by artists that play with light, like James Sorrell or Dan Flavin. And I've always worked on those projects, but somehow they were impossible for me to realize, like to make happen. Uh, and now with the NFT market, I know that I can somehow monetize those works or even like spend like some of the money that I've been making since last year. So this is in my plan right now. It's the kind of project that takes a way more effort, but it's one of those areas that I think would cross with what I've done before, but it still would be super fulfilling to see happening.
Hi, Pixelful. How are you? This has been wonderful. It's so great to see your work. I was wondering if you, how you decided to separate what work you mint on Tezos and what work you mint on ETH. If there's like a conceptual difference between the two.
Yeah, so nice to talk to you. Um, yeah, so I started to sell my work on Hackathon, right? It was a- actually no, I in um 2020 I've minted my very first works on Rarible, but by then I didn't understand how reliable the market was on Twitter, and I thought that well, oh maybe my work is uh, I think my work's nice. I'll just put it out there, and people will find it at some point. I started to follow some people on Variable, but I had like zero sales because I mean everything happens on Twitter. I think at least for artists that are not so well known, I think you still rely a lot on what you do on Twitter. So after that, I waited for months because I thought, well, I'm not sure how it works. And then in the beginning of March, when I heard about Hiket Nunk and also Miko was so important at that because I remember seeing the lives that she was doing and understanding more. So I started to explore with Hiket Nunk and see that finally I could sell my work. And to be honest, at the beginning, like the very first week that I sold a few pieces, I could not believe that I could sell digital pieces on the internet and receive money for it. I remember that on the Friday of the first week, I sent ice cream to my friends because I was so happy that I made the money. Uh, and later, when I started to work to do the Pixel full works, and they started to sell super fast. It was shocking, and then it continued to sell quickly. And for a long time, I felt that I didn't have uh, an enough base of collectors, and I didn't know how the ETH market worked. it seemed to me like having one collector to pay a lot of money for the work was kind of scary. But one event that changed that a lot was that before going to it, I tried to sell a one, and it was a collaboration with Sassoon, released on Hikatunk. And to our luck, Flamingo bought the work. Um, the reason why Flamingo bought the work is that, of course, well, I think they like the work, but also because they have previously bought Sassoon's work on the Super Rare or Foundation, don't remember well. So there was this connection. And then I realized that, well, maybe I can sell works to just a single collector at a higher price, but I I only decided to do that once I felt comfortable to do that. I think I honestly today I would not have waited that much. I think by then I was a little scary of seeing my. I mean, we were like we went through a lot of months with a lot of sales and a lot of things happened, and I think that for at least 6 months or so, um, every work that I put on Tesla's sold like immediately, like in the same day or in the same hour. So to me at that point, like the idea of having a work like in the shelf was kind of scary because I thought, well, maybe if I don't sell something, everyone will realize that I'm this imposter and I'm I'm no one else will buy my work. But after some time, like I felt comfortable enough to put on Foundation, which was the first platform that I released a work as Pixelful on Ethereum. And they were like super supportive as well. Like at the time, they were like super, they were paying attention to Hikatnuki and all the artists because we had like an amazing amount of artists doing amazing work, and they wanted some artists to come to Foundation. So Nicholas first invited me to release something there because he was curating this collection. The first time I said no because it still felt like, oh, I'm not sure if I have enough base to do that. And later, I then decided like, okay, I think I'm gonna try this. Although I have like all the concerns about energy and things like that, it felt to me like I want to be part of this. I want to spread my work as much uh, as I can, and I truly I also like I really like Vitalik and everything that he says about blockchain things like that. So I like Ethereum because of that, and I have trust that at some point it will be um, a more energy efficient platform, and it's worth to explore this right now. So that was kind of the thinking. I think today I would feel way more comfortable to put my work before I have this big following base because I'm for example I'm always trying to buy the work of other artists, and it's not like I can afford like with higher price pieces. So I think right now we're seeing a lot of people selling, and it feels more comfortable somehow.
Thank you. It's amazing to hear your journey and how you started. It's very inspiring.
Are there any other questions, comments?
So, do you have any suggestions, as well as things you, through your own experience, maybe you wouldn't do as far as marketing yourself? You said that you went from zero Twitter followers to the sort of like explosion of notoriety that you have now. Just curious about any sort of suggestions, tips about like how others can kind of find some success, if you have any. Obviously, uh, none of us are truly experts in this realm, but and anything you'd suggest not doing, or that you maybe even have regrets doing.
Well, I think it's kind of difficult to talk about this because it's nearly impossible to understand how the algorithms work, right? I have like the same amount of views when I look at the analytics of my Twitter, like which is the main um, platform for communication about the work and with collectors. When I look at the analytics, I see almost the same numbers that I was seeing like 10 or 8, 9 months ago. The amount of people that would see and interact with my work is nearly the same. So it's really hard to talk about this, but um, honestly, I don't have any regrets. I think so far it's been. I think the biggest joy of my life in the past year was the connections that I was able to do. Like I've met so many amazing people that I would never imagine that I would be friends with. And I used to have this vision that professional art, because, well, back then I was not a full time artist. I was an artist, but I was not like selling. And the traditional art world has this like this obscure thing where you cannot see exactly how the gears work. And to me, it was like, oh, I won't even like send an email to this person because this person will never answer me. So the most important thing that happened to me in this past year was the connections to other artists. And I think if there is one advice that I would give is to understand that you can always learn a lot from others and to keep really interested in the work and in the person and other artists, because oftenly I receive messages from other people, and you can clearly see when the person is really interested in you or when the person wants to just take advantage of something through you, right? So what have brought me where I am right now was the genuine interest in others. I think um, most of the big things that happened to me in this past year was not because of like big collectors or big connections, but through friends that helped me somehow. Through friends that I have, like, I shared both my success and my struggles, and people that will remember you at some point, like, oh, this person maybe I'm not a fit for this project, and someone is inviting me, but I have this friend that is. And uh, I see this like as the most important thing ever. And I feel like, for example, right now we are in a bear market with sales a little slow, and that always makes us like reflect on things. Um, and I always think that if everything went to zero somehow tomorrow, the thing that I would care the most about would be the friends that I've made. And I know that if we didn't have an NFT market anymore, we would still be producing interesting things and art projects and making collaborations with that would be amazing. So I think that that's like the and of course that comes also through sometimes collecting the work of others, right? I think a lot of people may see the act of collecting from others altruist thing where you are, oh, you're so support, and of course it's nice to be able to do so, but it's also super beneficial. Like you are demonstrating to another person that you are really interested in the person, and you are learning to price your work, and you are learning how the other artists talk about pricing the work. So I think that every chance that I have to create a real connection to someone, I will dive into. Uh, I think that one of the facts for that to happen is because before that, I used to feel super isolated somehow. I've always worked from my uh, studio, always worked remotely, and I used to feel super isolated. Like, um, I would like try to work in some places just because I wanted to talk to other people and learn from them. So I feel that this market has given me the opportunity to do so. It's the most valuable thing to me, but also the thing that helped me a lot to build this follower base and to see my name growing somehow. Because, well, if you support others, if you're interested in others, maybe people will do the same about you.
Regarding this topic, how important has it been Discord in your community building process? Because I see that you have a server dedicated to Pixelful, so it would be great to know how how was building a community through Discords too.
Yeah, I have a Discord, but I think somehow I failed with the Discord. I think uh, at first I didn't want to have a Discord, but I had some friends saying like, "Oh, you should because people can gather around Discord and talk." So I did it, and there's a lot of people in there, but it's just so much effort to keep a community happening, right? So there are some artists that are excellent on it, and or maybe they will hire someone to help. And I think it's a very smart choice because, um, like, I feel that as much as we can sometimes criticize certain projects in the NFT space, let's say uh, profile picture projects. You may not like profile picture projects, but they know how to make the community feel part of something. I think I was not so successful with that. I think the way that I built my following base on Twitter and how I created connections was by really talking one on one and collecting. And as I said, like everyone has a different approach. One thing that I would also do I did at the beginning was that for every work that I published, like at least on Hikatnook, where I would have like I started with 50 editions, then I decreased to 25, and I still change from time to time. I sometimes have like 1,000 editions or 200 editions or 25 editions, but ever since the beginning, I would keep 5 editions for myself that I would send for friends. Like, so I've given a lot of work in the past year, and I would do that. Sometimes people would um, send me a message after a release like, oh, I know that this sold like super fast, but wouldn't you sell me one of the editions that you can for yourself? And I've never, I won't say never. I may have sold like two or three times to collectors that collect like all the pieces and would miss a drop, but almost never I would sell them, and I would just say to the person, hey, I really appreciate that you are so interested in my work. Here's an edition I'm sending to you as a gift. And I did that a lot of times, like to friends that I would meet in person, or friends that would want to talk um, on calls. I think that that helped me a lot as well, like to trade works with people, to give works to people. So although Discord is an amazing tool, I think it takes a certain kind of effort that I don't have the skills to manage. But those other things really help. There is one thing in branding, and I've worked a lot of brand names and brand identities that I learned is that every time that you have, every touching point that you have the chance to communicate to someone, and you do, you will succeed. It will help you. It will help you more than not doing so. So I think that as many chances as you have to, and I'm talking about like creating an identity, but that can also serve for showing how you appreciate a community or something else. Like if you want to prove a point or you want to sustain an idea and you have the opportunities to do so, I think if you use them, that will help you a lot.
I have a question. What do you recommend for like beginners? P5 or processing?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that P5 is super interesting because JavaScript, which is the language um, um, that is the base for P5, is way more permissive. Like you can commit more errors, you can't like miss points or things like that. It's less complicated. Um, I like processing because like I think I've been using forever. But I think P5 is nice because not only the language is simpler, but you can also like share on browser. And there's a lot of resources out there. I think you would be served very well with any of them. Uh, but one thing that should also help with the decision is what exactly do you plan to do with the tool? Like if you want to create like more complex things that would take more processing somehow, maybe processing is better. If you want to create things to run on the browser that are simpler, and you want to somehow share like um, the actual software, then P5 is way better. I've worked with both, and sometimes I may go to one to the other, and it's quite easy to do so. So I think if you learn any of them, it will not be a problem to migrate if you somehow, let's say that today you don't want to do something at the browser, but at some point you decide to, and you just know processing. It's quite easy to go to the other, but I think that P5 is easier to deal with.
Thank you.
I have another question. I wanted to know, how do you approach the idea of creating for a market? Is this something you think about when creating or not?
If I understand, you're asking me if I think about the market when I'm creating.
Yeah, or how much you think about it when you create it.
Um, to be honest, I think a lot about the market. I think I mean, I think not so much about the sales. I will think about the sales, of course. Like the more you develop your career and the more collectors you have, like you start to feel some sort of pressure about what you do with your career. Some artists like just don't care. I think the fact that I'm finally able to um, make a living out of my art. And honestly, I wake up every day and think about how lucky I am to just like wake up and do art. That I would like very much to keep my life in that way. Like I would hate to go back and work to companies and things like that. So I think about the way that I can preserve things, but I I don't think that the fact that I think really helps me. I think what helps me is focusing on my art. I think because I'm too concerned with things that sometimes I should not. But I think what I really think about the market is how I display my art. think I think that's really important because we rely on screens and platforms and UIs that not always will favor ourselves. Like sometimes, and I'm saying this like as someone that do a very visual work, right? Which is easier than someone trying to do like conceptual work or trying to do poetry like Anna, for example. I think the at least most of the platforms are very visual driven. So I have like that in my favor, but it's still like um, I think sometimes is difficult to show exactly what you want in a platform. So, for example, sometimes when I release a new collection, I have this thing where I will like create a small website where I can display my work in the way that I intended. Uh, I don't think, I think that it's not very helpful with the sales because the market's super fast and people will rather click one time than two times. But I think it's essential to show what I think as an artist. So I think it's really hard to not think about the market unless you have a work that fits perfectly in the exhibition space, right? So museums do that at least to some extent very well. Like you have the white cube where you have uh, almost no interference in your work. And I like to think the digital space in the same way, like how I can make sure that my work is displayed in the best possible way. So yeah, that. And when it comes to sales, I think it's way less about the actual work, but more about the dynamics that you release. That sometimes can affect like which piece I will pick for that opportunity, right? Because maybe you have a work that would be better like for a one-on-one, and maybe that other piece would be for a with Full Edition. And also sometimes since I work with code, and sometimes I will like, for example, I'm about to release a collection in a platform that I will announce soon. And I'm going to release 100 works. So I have to think about the market because it's a lot of pieces, and I had to create a system to generate all the 100 pieces. So I think there are layers about how I think about the market. I try to, uh, and I've been trying harder this year, like to think as less as possible about sales. I try to focus on production, but it's hard. I mean, we are on Twitter all the time, and you're listening about things. So I think it's a challenge.
Amazing. Thank you, Pixelful. And we have, I think we have time for one last question. It would be awesome to uh, end with something that you guys ask. So, yeah, feel free to unmute. And again, if you want to use the chat, it's cool too. So, I will read your question right away. Okay, cool. So I see that we don't have any further questions. So yeah, I think we can end. Uh, yeah, we can end this session here. Thank you so much, Pixelful. It was an amazing Q&A, and thank you for your honesty and your amazing replies. So we can't wait to have you back in our next cohort. Thank you so much, guys, for your question, and thank you for being here today.
Oh, I just wanted to jump in and remind to ask Pixel, you said you were going to drop 2 books in the channel, book recommendations. I'd love to see those. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, I will absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you, Matilde. Thank you for everything that you people have been doing. The residency is amazing, and I feel happy to contribute. And also, as everyone, I'm always learning. So, uh, but if you have like any further questions or want to talk, I'm always open to DMs. Sometimes I take some time to answer, but I try to answer all of them, DMs, or even like scheduling calls. I'm always happy to talk to others. So again, thank you, and I'm always available.
Thank you, Pixelful. This was wonderful.
Thank
Bye,
you, Anna.
everyone.
So nice.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Have a nice one. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Have a good
See
one.
you later.